It's the Arch Advocate Podcast. It's Monday again, July 23rd. We got a lot to get to today. We've got a lot to get to this week. My goodness, we're going to start off with a tweet. Savage Sunday Tweets. That's going to be a new segment, I think. Savage Sunday Tweets. Let me know what you think about that. Go on to my website, archadvocate.com. Archadvocate.com, arch-advocate.com. Go down to the bottom. There's like this little mail thing, right? You can send me a message, and I'll read it. And let me know what you think about this, because this is brilliant. I'm pretty sure we get one of these every Sunday. This is from the President of the United States. To Iranian President Rouhani, right? In normal capitalization. Capital T, and the rest is normal. Capital I, capital P, capital R, right? To Iranian President Rouhani. Then we go into all caps. This is from the President of the United States to the leader of Iran. Never, comma, ever threaten the United States again, or you will suffer consequences the likes of which few throughout history have ever suffered before. Period. Continuing in all caps. We are no longer a country that will stand for your demented words of violence and death. Be cautious! Exclamation point. Yes. Thank you, Mr. President. That's what we want to see. That's what we want to see. Old President Welfare Queen was going over there handing out hand jobs to Iran. Oh, Iran, we're so sorry to be so mean. Here's a couple of $1 billion. You know what? I'm getting confused. I thought it was $1.2 billion, and now I'm hearing it was like $300 billion or whatever. I don't even know, but I know it was over $1 billion. And again, like, we lose the gravity of that, because like we throw that word around a billion, but we don't really, like, you have to sit down and really conceptualize how much money $1 billion is, right? Like I don't remember what it was. I've done the math several times, and I can't. I have to do the math every single time. But it's like you would have to spend like. I don't know, it's like $200 and some odd $1,000 a day, every day for 72 years. Yeah, because when I do the math, I do the division based on how long the average male lifespan is, which is 72 years. You know what I mean? Here, I'll tell you what, I'll edit it out, but right now what I'm going to do is I'm going to crunch the numbers, and I'll be right back to you. Or maybe I won't edit it out. Maybe you'll have to listen to me clicking on my thing. Let's see here. Never mind, I can't do it. It's still too early. I haven't had all my coffee yet. But $1 billion, it's a lot of money. Like, it's an impossible amount of money. Like $1 billion, if you had $1 billion, you would not be able to spend it in your lifetime. Like, no matter what you did. You know what I mean? Like, the only way to spend that much money you would have to go borrow money every single day and get yourself in debt and obligate yourself to, you know what I mean? Like, it's an impossible amount of $1 billion. He gave a lot of billions of dollars to Iran. You know, and the American people saw it. It's like, wait, that's our money. Like, you're not just, this isn't your candy store, mother effer. You don't get to just hand out our money. That's our money. You are the president. We elected you to lead this country. We did not elect you to just willy-nilly go passing out hand jobs and money to everybody, you son of a bitch. And so when the president comes out and says, hey, Iran, never, ever threaten the United States again, or you will suffer consequences the likes of that few throughout history have ever suffered before. I like that word, suffering. We are no longer, and that's a blow to Barack Obama and his husband, Mike. We're no longer a country that will stand for your demented words of violence and death. Be cautious. I like that. Thank you, Mr. President. Right? And there's a lot of things that I can say badly about the president, but I don't. You know what I mean? Because they're not that big of a deal. Yeah, I mean, there's some things that I could say, but until it's things like, well, I think that you're doing a bad job of leading the nation. Like when that happens, you'll hear from me. When President Trump does something where I think, wow, you did a bad job at leading the country there. Like when I finally formed my full opinion, then you'll hear that from me. Like that thing with Russia. Like, as it stands right now, when he was standing there with Putin, sure, I would have preferred that he said something else. But it's not over yet. Maybe he's got something up his sleeve. I don't know. We'll find out. And if it turns out bad, I'll say, yeah, well, I think you did a bad job there. Because I can praise him for good things and ridicule him for bad things. That's how it's supposed to work. This blind allegiance thing that people have, it's annoying. Like if you have blind allegiance to the president of the United States where it's just like, oh, the guy can do no wrong, don't you understand you're doing the exact same thing that those people who can't wait to give a blowjob to Barack Obama's husband, you're doing the same thing they're doing. Don't do that, man. Be objective. You can praise what's good and you can ridicule what's bad, and you have to ridicule what's bad because power, man, it corrupts people. You have to keep them in check. You have to keep them in check. You have to keep them accountable. That's the reason we are in such a sad state of affairs right now, where we have the entire intelligence community off the rails. It's because we didn't keep them accountable. Maybe we couldn't, maybe we couldn't keep them. Maybe we're just too busy, right? I got my life I got to run, man. I got to go to work for 10 hours a day. I got to come home. I got to cook, meals. I've got kids to raise, man. I got dance recitals. I got music lessons. I got horseback riding lessons. I got, football practice. I got stuff I got to do, man. I can't be keeping my eye on the CIA, for God's sakes. That's what I pay Rand Paul for. That's what I pay Duncan Hunter for. You understand? Like that's how it's, well, I don't know. It's supposed to work. In other news, all right, let me just address this. There's a number of things I need to get to today, but had a bit of contentious, you guys remind me, I need to read an email from a listener. But had a bit of a contentious argument. So for those of you who were in on the argument, I'll let you guys know that I broke this down even further. A man was killed over the weekend in Florida. All right, now Florida, for those of you who do not live in the United States or are not aware of this, Florida is what's called a stand your ground state, right? Every state has the right to self-govern. And it gets a little dicey when you start talking about, the Bill of Rights and the amendments to the Constitution, because those are federal matters. Therefore, it's not in the purview of states' rights to self-govern. You know what I mean? Like, the state does not have the right to manipulate your right to free speech because that's a federal matter. It means everybody in the federation, it applies to them. Right? Same thing with the second one, right? The right to bear arms and form militias. It's like, one of the reasons why people are so afraid of Brett Kavanaugh is because he is a staunch advocate of the Second Amendment. He's a big fan of the NRA, and you get people like that in the Supreme Court, and they will go to places like Connecticut and say, you don't have the right to tell people how big of a magazine that they can have. And they'll go to California and say, you don't have the right to tell people that they can't walk down the street with a sidearm. Because that's a federal matter. It's not in the purview of the state to self-govern. Right? That's, we're if Kavanaugh gets in there, and I believe he will, we're almost certainly going to see that. And if you don't see that, if you don't see the Supreme Court justice putting the hammer down on some of these states that are getting fast and loose with the Second Amendment, you need to call your congressman, right, and demand it and say, listen, I need you to go tell the Supreme Court that we want to see the federation working as a federation, right? The states have the rights to do everything that they want to do outside of what's in the Constitution. Right? If you want to have gambling in your state, that's not in the Constitution. So you can do whatever you want. You have the right to self-govern. You want gay folks to get married in your state? Great. That's not in the Constitution. It's not in the purview of the federal government to make judgments on that. You have the rights to marijuana, cannabis, hemp, states' rights. You know what I mean? But First Amendment, Second Amendment, all the amendments, That's, you don't get to muckle with that. That's in the purview of the federal government. So a man, over the weekend, I think it was Friday or Saturday, guy pulls up, guy and his girlfriend and his kid. Now listen, there was loss of life, and I don't want to sound flippant, all right? I don't want to be flip in this. But there's a couple of things on this. So a guy and his girlfriend and his kid, they pull up to a convenience store, right? And the girl is driving, and she parks her car in a handicap spot, which is against the law, right? You're not allowed to park in a handicapped spot unless you are in fact handicapped, and you could be handicapped as all get out, but if you don't have a placard, right? If you don't have the little symbol either on your license plate or in your window, on your hanging from your mirror or something, tough. Oh, you forgot it at home, guy that has no legs? Tough. You're parking out with the rest of us. You have to display that you have the right to park there. And they didn't, right? The lady stays in the car, which is relevant. And the man, and he's a big fella. He's a big boy now. Him and his kid get out of the car. They go into the convenience store. A man pulls up, and he sees that this lady's parked in the handicapped spot. So he goes to, give her a little bit of what for. Starts talking to her. It's not violent. And we don't know if he was raising his voice or anything, but he was arguing with the lady. Right? Now, so far, we have two things that are wrong. The lady should not have parked in the handicapped spot, and the man should have just minded his own damn business. Right? He should have. He should not have started an argument with the lady. Right? So, two wrongs. And two wrongs actually don't make a right. However, if you eat a jelly donut, if you want to avoid the side effects of eating that jelly donut, you can counteract the side effects of the first jelly donut if you eat a second jelly donut. That's science, all right? If you don't believe that, then you don't believe in science, all right? Just, get woke, brother. Eat that second donut. Anyways, two wrongs so far. Now, the big fella, he comes out of the store, and he sees some strange dude in an argument with his girl, right? And he says, oh, hell no. He runs up and immediately, because we can see the whole video, there's no chit-chat going on. He just runs up on that dude and stiff arms him to the ground, right? He just immediately goes in because he's a big fella, right? Guy goes down on the ground, so third wrong, right? So yes, she shouldn't have parked there. Yes, the dude should have minded his own business, but now we have a third wrong. You do not settle your disputes immediately with violence. Violence is a very, 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 very last resort, if at all. Right? You should never resort to violence unless you absolutely have to. This was this guy's starting move, was to just run up on this dude who was not touching his girlfriend and just shoves him to the ground. All right? Now that's assault. That is a felony. Right? So, 1, 2, 3 wrongs. Now the guy that had been shoved to the ground is living in the same times that you and I are living in. Right? We are living in crazy times. We're living in crazy times when we can't know what other people are thinking. Right? The social contract has evidently been ripped up and thrown into a fire. There's no more social contract, right? There's no more, I can no longer assume that you're going to have good English Christian manners when dealing with you. I don't know what you're capable of. I don't know if you're going to do harm to my children, my wife, myself as the breadwinner. Right? I can no longer assume that you're going to practice proper manners and etiquette because the social contract has been completely torn up. We have people running around saying that everybody's a Nazi, 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 Nazi. Right? Well, you're destroying the fabric of our society when you do that. Because what you're saying is you believe that I deserve to die. Why? Because Nazis deserve to die. So when you call me a Nazi, you have then put me in a very precarious situation where it's like, okay, well then I have to assume that you have nothing but intentions for my death. Because we kill Nazis. That's what America's good at. Right? The Nazis sprang up, what was that, 70, 80, 90, 80 years ago? The Nazis sprang up, and what did America do? We went over there and we killed them, because that's what America does. We kill Nazis, and if you call me a Nazi, I have to assume that you mean to kill me. You've destroyed the social fabric with your loose words. You gave up the power of that word, but I have not. Right? You use that word as a platitude. You're just throwing it around as if to. Nazi does not mean guy that I don't like and person I hate. It means that's somebody who deserves to die. That's what that word means now. And when you call me a Nazi, it's like, okay, well, I guess I'm going to have to defend myself as if it's to the death. Right? You've just told me that you intend to kill me by calling me a Nazi. One of us is going to go then. And I have to do everything in my power to make sure it's not me. Because I have responsibilities. I have a wife, I have a son, and I have another one on the way. That's 2 sons. You know what I mean? My plate is full. And I can no longer assume that you are on board with the social contract. You just ran up on me and shoved me to the ground because I was arguing with the lady. Right? No talking. No, hey man, don't be talking to my woman. Right? None of that. None of what the social contract would have required. Hey man, get away from my wife or you and I are we're gonna have us a fist fight, you understand? Right? I'm gonna give you a chance because I have manners. Maybe you're having a bad day, maybe you've had a couple of wobbly pops, right? Maybe you're not in your right mind, but let me just tell you, now that I'm here, things are real. None of that. He just ran right up on him, shoved the dude to the ground, and the man pulled out his weapon. There was one more exchange of words, but we don't know what it is because we don't have audio. And he shot him. And he died. The man, the boyfriend. The boyfriend was shot. And he walked back into the store and collapsed and died. Right? Now, there was some back and forth. If you are on my Facebook page, you can see this post. And a friend of mine who lives in England, by the way, he's an actual poet. Like he is a poet in the same sense that like all the famous poets were like. Someday this guy is going to be very famous, right? But right now he lives outdoors, and he travels around England and he travels around Europe, and he's called the Pavement Poet. I know this guy. I camped with him for a couple weeks in Cologne, Germany. Right, this is a friend of mine, and he's one of my favorite, like there's things in traveling that they're like acquisitions. Like when I sat and I watched the sunrise over the Mediterranean Sea when I was in Spain, like that's an acquisition to me. That's like a stamp and a passport. And having a friend now who is an actual like living poet, like not a guy who writes poetry, but a poet. You know what I mean? Like it's different if I sit down and I write roses are red and violets are blue and blah blah blah. It's like that might be a poem, but I'm not a poet. Like this guy's an actual poet, and he wrote me. He says he goes now, again. He's English, so he comes from a place where he's never had the right to bear arms. Right, that's never been a part of the social fabric of where he comes from. And he writes in and he says, because I posted that video and I just wrote, just in case anybody wonders where I come down on this, if you threaten me in any way, If you put your hands on me and do not kill me, I will kill you, and you will be in the earth no longer. Right? This, because that's where we're at as a society. I don't like living in that mentality. I don't like thinking to myself, man, if anything pops off, I have to defend myself as if my life is in danger, because it is. Look what just happened in Portland a couple weeks ago when we saw Rufio knock that dude out. That dude was trying to brain him with a baton. He was trying to kill him because his perceived enemy was there in the town center praying with their fellow believers, praying to their God. Right? And somebody else decided this is unacceptable. I'm going to try to kill that man for coming down here and praying with his friends. That's where we're at. I didn't cause everybody to go crazy, but people have gone crazy. I didn't make it happen. I didn't want it, but that's where we're at now. You know, we've got Black Lives Matter out there calling for the death of policemen, right? We've got a sitting U.S. Congresswoman in Maxine Waters calling for violence against people who disagree with her. That's where we're at. That is where we are at, right? You know how, like, when you go to the mall and you're like, oh, geez, where's the hot topic? I mean, you, not me. You go to you go to that little thing, and there's that little red arrow that says, you are here. Well, guess what? You are here. Times are crazy. Over 70% of everybody in the United States is on medication. I don't know which one of you it is, but it's 3 out of 4 of you. I don't know how you're going to react. I don't know if you just took an Ambien and washed it down with a shot of Jack. I have no idea where your mentality is at. All I know is that everybody seems to have gone crazy, and it's like, well, if you come after me, you threaten me in any way, if you give me any sort of impression that my life is in danger, hey man, I got kids and they need me. They don't need you. So if you infer to me that my life is in danger, well then I guess one of us has got to go then, right? So Dan, the poet wrote me and he says crazy laws. I get the need to be protected by laws which allow self-defense, but the response from the armed man was totally disproportionate to the threat posed. The law should be amended accordingly. Well, that's a couple of things wrong with that, is that you're talking about changing laws. And you're not really talking about changing laws. You're talking about changing the constitution of a nation. And this isn't a nation like, Luxembourg. We're talking about the United States. We ain't, the law in this case is not, it's not like some municipal, law where, like a yellow light, you either need to speed up or you need to stop. Well, the law says you need to stop, but it kind of means also you can speed. It's not like that kind of law. We're talking about the Constitution. And so it's like, well, no. I wrote him back. I said, nope, get handsy, get executed. You put your hands on me, man. It's like, well, you've just threatened my life. You put your hands on me, that's a felony. That's assault. You have now communicated to me that my life is in danger. People get beat to death thousands of times every year in America. Hands and feet are like very high on the list of things that can kill you in America. Hands and feet. People get kicked in the head, they get punched in the head, and they die. Like, that's a thing that happens. I had a friend of mine, he wasn't a friend, he was just a kid I knew from church. He was kind of a newer kid, so I didn't really know him, but good-looking kid. He was strong, and he worked at a bar as a bouncer, right? I mean, he wasn't like big like The Rock or one of those guys or Vin Diesel, but he was a strong kid. And he was breaking up a fight one night in front of the bar, and he got pushed back, and he came off center, right? He got lost his center, and he fell backwards. And he hit his head on the kind of like the brick trim on the outside of the building, snapped his neck, effing died. He died. You know, like, look, you put your hands on me. You just threatened my life. You can die from that. I can die from that. You put your hands on me. If I'm packing, it's coming out. The gun's coming up, and you're gonna get it. So, my advice, I don't know. I don't want to sound flippant here, but the thing is like, look, if you just return to the social contract, right? If everybody just goes back to the social contract of like, look, if I see you misbehaving, I come out and you're shouting out my wife, or if you're talking to my wife inappropriately, I'm going to give you a talking to. And hopefully you'll come to your senses. And if you want, if you want to box it out, then all right. Like if that's what it comes to. But then again, it's like, look, we're talking about a parking spot here. No blood needs to be shed. Maybe we can have some words, tell each other to F off. You go back in your car and I'll get in mine. We'll drive away and we'll never have to see each other again. Social contract. You know what I mean? And he said, after I said that, he says, allowing such things only sends the wrong message. At this point, the smallest scuffle can end in death. That just isn't right. That's the thing, Mark. I'm sorry, Danny. That's the thing. That's it. The smallest scuffle can end in loss of life. That's why. Right? And in Florida, it's a stand your ground state. If you represent violence to me, that man who shot the other man, he didn't even get charged. Didn't spend a night in jail. And he won't. He'll never be charged because the whole thing's on video. You can see everything. Right? And then a friend of mine, Mike, who I joined the Marine Corps with, right? Me and Mike go way back like scoliosis. Mike says, I think dude was a little quick on the trigger. Yeah, I'll give you that. That's for sure. Putting myself in the shoes of the guy walking out of the store and seeing some dude shouting down my girlfriend, I don't know, man. I might feel the need to insert myself in that situation. Well, not my girlfriend. It'd have to be a theoretical girlfriend because mine will throw hands. I'll probably walk out and have to break up a fight, but I digress. The dude on his ass pulled, and the other guy backed up, looked to me like the threat was end. Well, yeah, I can see that, but there was that moment where he did back up, but there's just like right before that trigger was pulled, it kind of looked like the dude talked shit again. You know what I mean? Like if I found myself in that situation, right, where things escalated to that level that quickly, and a gun is now pointed at me, I'd have to say, hands up, man. Hey, man, it's not worth it, right? I got kids. You know what I mean? Like whatever beef you have, it's not worth taking another man's life. We don't know. I don't know. But what we do know, right? What we do know. And these are the things that you have to be very careful of. It's like, well, it looked like this, it looked like that, it looked like this, right? But what we know for a fact was the dude came out of the store and shoved that guy violently to the ground. That happened, right? It's at that point where it's like, okay, in this day and age, now again, it's today. If this was 1987 and there was such thing as Facebook and YouTube and all that other stuff, and we were looking at the same thing, I would agree with all of the dissenting argument. I would agree with every one of them. Because back then, which was not terribly long ago, back then, things like that they happened, but man, very rarely. Usually involving alcohol and dudes in bars. You know what I mean? Not involving children, looking at it and you know what I mean? Like but the insanity of the day, that's the problem, is that people are crazy these days. And we're living in crazy times. right? And it's not just that. Like, I don't want to get into, I don't want to turn that incident in Florida into some philosophical thing, other than like, this is one more thing to let you know you are here. This is where we are at as a people, right? And you have to keep that in mind. You have to keep that in mind. You don't know, we're just now finding out that a communist it was the leader of the Central Intelligence Agency, right? Like the most feared of the the sort of Men in Black type agencies, where it's like, okay, all right, we all kind of get it. Like, the CIA is doing some illegal shit, and we're just going to let them do it because they're probably securing the nation, right? But, well, as it turns out, no, there was a communist running it, right? So those times are over. Like, that comfort that we've always lived in, thinking that, yeah, we know that the CIA is assassinating world leaders and they're manipulating, elections in other countries to try to, gain more control. And we all just sort of let them do it because we all believed whatever it was that we believed. And I think most of us believed that, well, they're spreading democracy, right? They're spreading the American dream. Well, as it turns out, no, they were getting us into wars in Iraq based on false information, weapons of mass destruction. Like, they were doing horrible things, and a communist was running the CIA. A communist was running the CIA, people. A communist was running the CIA, people. That's where we're at. You are here. If somebody puts their hands on you, right, it's go time, right? If people show up to your house, like, again, we're now finding out that the government is subsidizing to the tune of over $40 billion a year. $40 billion a year. That is going to agencies like Child Protective Services, where they're stealing children, and children are going missing, and it's being subsidized by the federal government to the tune of $40 billion a year. That's happening. You are here. That's where we're at as a people. And thank God there's a guy in the White House that's like, hey, American people, enough is enough, man. You've got some shady stuff going on in the government. You've got some shady stuff going on in the government, man. And you people, American people, you need to rein this in. You need to take back the control over your Congress people and your senators and your governors. Look what's happening in California right now. Right? Paul Joseph Watson just did a really awesome video. I recommend it. It's like, just came out like yesterday or the day before. Actually, here, let me pull it up before I tell you exactly. It says, well, just look up. No, it came out yesterday. So Paul Joseph Watson, and the title of the video is San Francisco is a Shithole. Right? Now, San Francisco, I've never liked San Francisco, but not for reasons that you would think. San Francisco is I don't like big cities, and San Francisco is a big city. It's big, big, big. And it's a lot of one-way streets, right? So like, if you're not accustomed to driving in heavy congestion with crazy rules as to how streets work and which way they're going and that sort of thing, San Francisco is a very uncomfortable place to drive. However, man, if you want good food and good fashion, it's San Francisco, New York, and Paris, all right? And outside of that, there's probably some other cool places, but San Francisco has its redeeming qualities. But right now, there's shit everywhere in San Francisco on the ground. Human feces. Right now, think about this. Again, you are here. This is where we are at. One of the points that Mr. Watson makes in this video, I'll get into a couple of them. Now, you got to think about this, right? There's human feces on the floor, on the ground. I put it on the ground. Oh boy, I just ruined that. There's human shit on the floor. Okay, one thing that I've noticed that's sort of in the human condition, that no matter what your job is, you believe that yours is the most important job, right? And I suppose there's an element of that where it's like, yeah, it should be that way. You should have that much pride in your job to think that yours is the most important job. And you'll humbly say, well, obviously, brain surgeon is more important, or the guy or girl who is trying to find a cure for cancer, obviously their job is more important. I can tell you whose job is the most important. I can tell you which invention or which discovery was the most important to mankind. Right? This is actually very simple. It's plumbing. The most important job in the world is a plumber. The most important invention, discovery, however it is that you want to conceptualize it, is plumbing. Right? The Romans figured out plumbing about 2,000 years ago, give or take. And the reason that that's important is because that's how we get rid of our waste. Right? It's how we flush our shit and our piss. And back then, I think they just shoved it into a river that people drank from, and that was a bad idea. And they used lead pipes, which ultimately drove a whole bunch of people crazy. But the most important occupation to have in society is a plumber. And I'll qualify that. You see, when we read through the history books about the times when there was massive plague, like the bubonic plague and the black plague and this plague and that plague, like plague, it's a very real thing, and it kills millions of people, right? It's sickness, and almost all of it is caused from human waste, right? Human waste is, how you always hear about like sarin gas and like chemical warfare, and the reason why chemical warfare is illegal. Do you know what you want to know what like sarin gas and like mustard gas and all that stuff is made out of? It's made out of rotted body parts. Like mustard gas literally is made from rotting chicken. They take chicken, they let it rot, and then there's this chemical that rotting chicken makes. That's what mustard gas is. It's rotting flesh. Right? Like it's nasty. And human waste is like was always throughout history was one of the main causes of like every ailment. Like 99% of everything that went wrong in human history had to do with human waste, because people would just piss in the street and shit in the street, and that's how people get sick. So you go to San Francisco and there's human feces on the ground. That's not just an aesthetic problem. It is that too. It is an aesthetic problem. It's nasty to look at. It's nasty to smell. There is no smell on the planet equal to human shit. It has its own distinct nastiness, right? So that's an aesthetic problem. And that problem poses a very real and severe economic consequence. Now you've got people that are like, oh man, I've always read about the 60s and Haight-Ashbury, and like all the groovy people went to San Francisco, and that's where the Grateful Dead lived, and whatever. And they go there, they have this dream of going to San Francisco, and when they get there, they're hit in the nose by a waft of human shit. So what do? Do they go down to Haight-Ashbury and buy a bunch of beanies for their heads and hacky sacks? No, they turn right back around and they go in their hotel room and they pack their bags. And they call the airline and say, look, is there any way I can not have to wait for 4 days to get back on my plane to fly back to Poughkeepsie? Can I get on a plane right now? I can't be in the city right now. It smells like shit. And that means that tourist isn't spending money. Economics. Do you understand? There's a spiritual problem going on in San Francisco, and spirituality and economics are never far apart. That city is being run so badly by a bunch of demonic cowards that they're letting people shit in the streets, and guess what? That plays, what I mean? It's not very far. You know what I'm saying? It's not a long leap from that spiritual problem to, oh, these people aren't spending any money, therefore we're not making any money. These business owners cannot stay afloat in their very expensive leases that they have on their haircut stores and their, whatever, the shops that sell all the hippie stuff or whatever. You know what I mean? Like it has a very real economic effect. And furthermore, the final point is, it will have a physical ailment It hasn't quite fully manifested itself yet. But when you have waste of any sort, particularly human waste, on your streets, disease is knocking at the door. It's coming. It's coming. Like, unless they fix that problem right now or this week, by Friday, that problem will manifest itself in physical disease. You can't have human feces and not have disease. It's not just an aesthetic problem. It's not just a spiritual problem. It is also an economic problem, and it is also a health and well-being problem. You are going to see horrific sickness coming out of that. Now, here's the kicker. This is where you get into like socialism, man. It's like, socialism. It's funny. And somebody remind me to bring this back around. They're spending over $40,000 a year on every homeless person in San Francisco, and it's a lot of homeless people. Now think about that: $40,000 a year that they're spending on these homeless people who are still out there. You see these people laying on the ground, shitting themselves, and talking to people that aren't there. It's like that person is the beneficiary of $40,000 every year. They don't have that in cash. It's just that's what the city is spending on that person. It's like, well, why have you not eradicated homeless? $40,000. You know how many hardworking Americans are paying mortgages and have cars and have jobs, and they don't make $40,000 a year? How is this? Who do you have running? Who is your economist? Mayor? Who the hell is your economist? Is it Bernie Madoff? Who do you have running your number? $40,000 a year, you assholes. And this is the problem with socialism. Now, I'm probably going to forget what I'm trying to say, because there's so many different ways. Listen, that Alexandria Cortez girl, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, she is an absolute godsend. We need to be thanking the Lord Jesus that lady has won the primaries and she gets to run for Congress of the Bronx in November. Because this lady is dumber than a bag of hammers. Every time she opens her mouth, it's just nonsense words comes. It's like, it is hilarious. And the problem with that is that like it truly is hilarious when she talks. That's a problem, because you forget while you're laughing, like, oh no, this is a person that's been granted the right to run for Congress in November, and she'll probably win. Right? That's a huge problem. This moron is going to be a congresswoman. She's an idiot. Like, she says the dumbest, like, just like, wow, you're dumb. And there's a Republican or some sort of conservative that's going to be running against her. It's like, dude, all you have to do is get a whole bunch of cameras and just get in one debate with her. Just get her on stage with a microphone in an open debate and just let her talk. You don't even have to say anything. Just get her talking and you'll win. As long as everybody can see it. Like get it recorded, have a debate with her, record it, put it on YouTube, spend $100,000 putting it out on Facebook and YouTube and Instagram and Twitter, and just spend some money, a little bit of money, and you'll be fine. Because once people see what a dope she is, like, there's no way she can win. But I digress. Socialism. There's this new push for socialism in America right now, and it's really kind of funny because when I hear that, socialism and communism, socialism and communism are the same things. Communism is what happens once people realize that socialism doesn't work, right? They double down, and socialism starts, and then they realize it doesn't work, so they double down, and then it becomes communism. That's how that works. And when people say, like, oh, we want to be socialist, when I hear that, because I have a friend that lives in Croatia, and she has like an actual PhD in being like, she loves the idea of communism. And we used to talk about it. She's unfriended me since, but we used to talk about it, and it's like, when you say you want to be a socialist, to me, that's for me, that's the same thing as saying, like, I want to have a system of government of pharaohism. Remember pharaohs in ancient Egypt? We want to go back to doing that again. Like, when you say you want to be a socialist, you might as well be saying, I want to have a pharaoh system. Whatever system of government that was that pharaohs ran. That's what you're basically you're saying, like, look, the reason we don't have pharaohs in the earth anymore is because we've evolved sociologically past that. We are never going to have that again, right? We still have monarchies, but man, they are hanging on by their last thread. Like, that's the idea of monarchies is almost over. Like, we're seeing it dying out. 150 years ago, the King of England was a dude who had a lot of juice. You know what I mean? There was a parliament and all that stuff, but not really. Everything came down to the king. Well, that's a thing of the past, and we're never going to go back to it. This guy, Xi Jinping in China, the guy who's trying to set himself up as emperor again, it's like, dude, you're setting yourself up for failure because we are never going back to having an emperor again. We're not going to have the new dynasty of China. Like, we're just not going to do that. Nobody's going to go for that. There's too many people with too much information. We now have all of the information. We're not going to let you be a effing emperor. Come on, man. Get with the times. And so when people say, like, I want to be a socialist, it's like, dude, we've already tried that and it does not work. We know that it doesn't work, and we know why it doesn't work. And we also know that tens of millions of people die. And we also know that it always turns into communism. You know what I mean? Like, we're not going to do that. We're not going to be socialist. Why? Because we know that it does not work. That's why. Yes, capitalism has its problems. Sure. Sure it does. Right? But it doesn't have tens of millions of people starving to death problems like socialism does. It doesn't have the problem of it always morphs into communism. It doesn't. Communism or capitalism doesn't have that problem. Your system does. And so when Bernie Sanders gets up there with his stupid hair and he gets that, standing next to that pretty young girl from the Bronx, it's like, you people just keep talking, man. You just keep talking, because we're not going to do that. We're not going to be socialists, and we're not going to have a pharaoh, right? And when you talk about your socialism thing, like, to a rational person, it's like, you might as well, when you talk about socialism, you might as well be advocating for a pharaoh. It's that dumb. We're not doing it. You know what I mean? That being said, I want to bring attention, if you haven't seen it yet or even heard of it, Ben Shapiro has a Sunday show every week called The Sunday Special. This says episode 11. I didn't know that there was 11 episodes. He's been doing this for 11 weeks. I did not know that. But yesterday's was particularly compelling. He sat down with Eric Weinstein. Stein. Anyways, this is a guy, look, one of the things that he alludes, you need to watch this in its entirety. Because one of the things that he alludes to is he's saying, like, look, there has to be a new, like, socialism is a system of economics, a bad one that doesn't work, but that's what socialism and communism are. They're systems of economics. And capitalism is a system of economics, right? Being a pharaoh or being an emperor, that is a system of government that ties into economics, right? And one of the points that Weinstein makes is, like, he says, I don't know what it's going to be. I have no idea what it's going to look like, but there has to emerge a new system of economics, right? Because capitalism is, with the amount of information and the amount of trade that's happening, capitalism is going to have to morph. We're gonna have to have something in place where, it changes and it'll be called something else. And he gives a couple of clues. It was really compelling because I love when people talk like that, right? We cannot go backwards economically. That's a fact. Socialism would be a move to go backwards economically. Just like, and And so if you're going to move back, and this is why the Pharaoh joke is so funny in my mind, because it's like, well, if you're going to try to move backwards, then it really doesn't matter how far back you go. You say you want to move backwards and go to socialism. It's like, well, why don't you just go back to being a pharaoh or having a pharaoh? You can't do that. The people cannot move backwards. Moving forward, though, we're going to have to morph into something else, and it's not going to be socialism or a pharaoh. It's going to have to be something new, something nobody's ever seen, and he talks about that. And so I was very, one, it's a really good conversation, and I don't want to spend too much time, washing Ben Shapiro and Eric Weinstein's balls, but it's a good thing. Also, it's two Jewish guys talking, so if you don't watch this episode of Sunday Special, then you don't like Jews. And if you don't like Jews, guess who else doesn't like Jews? See what I did there? See that? All right. Thanks for tuning in for the Monday show. Go on to Arch Advocate. Hey, if you want to keep this show alive, man, I need some do-re-mi, baby. You can go on to archadvocate.com, arch-advocate.com, archadvocate.com. You can become a monthly Patreon guy or girl, right? Send a couple of bucks a month. I think $1 a month is like 3 cents a day, man. That's less money than you have underneath your car seat right now, right? Or if you just want to send a big old gob of cash, you can do that on PayPal. Either way, it's appreciated. It keeps the show afloat. That's it for today. I've got a lot to get to this week, man. This is going to be an exciting week. Appreciate you guys. I will talk to you tomorrow.